My name is Sarah Miller, and for 7 years I lived a lie that cost me everything but my soul. After my husband David was killed in a freak accident, I made a choice I'll regret until my dying day. I handed my 4-month-old daughter, Maya, to my mother and went to work. As a night shift nurse, I pulled 12-hour rotations, eating hospital leftovers and wearing threadbare scrubs just to wire home $40,000 every single year. I thought that $280,000 total was buying my daughter a life of comfort and safety. I was wrong. On her 7th birthday, Maya didn't ask for a toy. Instead, she tugged my sleeve and whispered 5 words that turned my blood to ice. Please don't send Grandma money. What I discovered when I followed my mother the next morning wasn't just betrayal, it was a criminal conspiracy. My money was gone, my daughter was hungry, and the woman I trusted most was moving to take my child away for good. Before we go back to the day this nightmare started, please subscribe to join our community. Your support helps us tell these stories of truth and survival, and I'd love to connect with you. Drop a comment and let me know where in the world you are listening from today. The life I knew didn't end with a whimper. It ended with a knock on a Tuesday. My husband, David, was only 27. He was the kind of man who smelled like cedar and sawdust, a man who spent his weekends building a rocking chair for our nursery while I sat nearby, heavy with our first child. He was electrocuted at a construction site just outside the city when a faulty breaker box sent 240 volts through his heart. I was 25, sitting in that very rocking chair, nursing 4-month-old Maya, when 2 men in suits stood on my porch with hats in their hands. I don't remember their names. I only remember the way Maya screamed because I had suddenly squeezed her too tight, my body reacting to a grief my brain couldn't yet process. The life insurance payout was $120,000. To some, that sounds like a fortune. But when you're a widow with an infant and a mountain of grief, you realize that money is just a very short bridge over a very deep canyon. I had just finished my nursing program, top of my class, pinned and ready to save the world. But the local hospitals weren't hiring new grads. The only opening was at a high-volume facility in Roanoke, 4 hours north. It was the graveyard shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 4 nights a week. I looked at my tiny daughter and realized the math of my life didn't add up. I had no family in Roanoke, no daycare that operated at midnight, and no one to call if a shift ran late. That's when my mother, Eleanor, drove down. She sat on my porch, held Maya against her chest, and looked at me with eyes that seemed like a safe harbor. She brushed a stray hair behind my ear, just like she did when I was a little girl, and said the words I would replay 1,000 times in my head for the next 7 years. Bring Maya to me, Sarah. You go work. You build a future for her. I'll raise her like she's my own. You don't need to worry about the money for her. Just send what you can. I wanted to believe her so badly that I didn't see the trap. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that by working these brutal hours, I was being the best mother I could be. So, I packed my life into cardboard boxes, handed my 4-month-old soul to my mother, and drove 4 hours through a blinding rainstorm toward a lonely studio apartment. The first year nearly broke me in that quiet, invisible way things break when no one is looking. My life became a cycle of fluorescent lights and the smell of antiseptic. I worked 48 hours a week on my feet. I slept from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. in a room that smelled like other people's cooking and damp carpet. Every single dollar I didn't need for rent or gas went home. Like clockwork, on the first of every month I wired $3,300 to my mother's account, $40,000 a year. I ate peanut butter sandwiches and hospital cafeteria leftovers. I wore the same 3 pairs of scrubs until the seams split. But every night before my shift, I'd FaceTime Maya. I watched her learn to crawl through a screen. I watched her first steps through a pixelated lens. She learned to say mama to a piece of glass because that was the only place she ever saw me. My mother would hold the phone, smiling that warm, practiced smile. Behind her, the house always looked perfect. Maya would be wearing a new pink onesie or a ruffled dress I'd never seen before. She's doing great, honey, Mom would coo. We went to the zoo today. She's so happy. Those photos and those smiles were the fuel that kept me going through the exhaustion. They were also the veil that kept me from seeing the truth. I thought the system was working. I thought my sacrifice was being honored. I had no idea that while I was cleaning bedpans and charting vitals at 3 a.m., my mother was already drafting a plan to ensure I stayed an outsider in my own daughter's life. By the second year, the guilt had become a permanent resident in my chest, a dull ache that never quite left. I visited twice a month, driving 4 hours down on a Friday morning, fueled by caffeine and a desperate need to touch my daughter's face. For 36 hours, the world made sense, but looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. I was just too exhausted to read the map. The first crack appeared on a crisp afternoon in October. Maya was 18 months old, toddling around the kitchen in a pair of corduroy overalls I recognized from 3 visits ago. The knees were stained, and one strap was held together by a rusty safety pin because the button had popped off. "Mom," I asked, trying to keep the judgment out of my voice, "did you get the fall clothes I sent money for? I wired extra last month." Eleanor didn't even blink. She just kept stirring her coffee with a rhythmic clink, clink, clink. "Oh, you know how fast she grows, Sarah. I haven't had a second to get to the shops. It's a lot, looking after a toddler at my age." I felt a pang of sympathy, so I left $500 in cash on the kitchen counter with a note specifically for Maya's wardrobe. But when I returned 6 weeks later, Maya was still in those same safety-pinned overalls. The $500 was gone, and my mother's excuses were getting smoother. That was the same weekend I saw the truck. A shiny charcoal gray pickup with chrome running boards and a growling engine pulled into the driveway. My brother Tyler stepped out like he was the king of the county. Tyler hadn't held a steady job in years. He was always between opportunities or waiting on a settlement. "Tyler got a new truck?" I asked, staring at the vehicle that cost more than my annual salary. My mother wiped her hands on a dish towel, her eyes darting away. "He's doing better, Sarah. Found some work. Be happy for your brother." Tyler walked in, ignored me, and didn't even glance at Maya, who was playing on the floor. He went straight to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and then leaned into the kitchen doorway. "Ma, you got any cash? I'm running low on gas." I watched, frozen, as my mother opened her purse and handed him 2 crisp $100 bills. She did it with a casualness that suggested it was a ritual. I looked at the pantry shelves above the stove. Fewer cans than last time. The fruit bowl was empty. A pit began to form in my stomach. $40,000 a year was flowing into this house, yet the refrigerator looked like a desert while my brother was driving a showroom fresh truck. As the months bled into year 3, the cracks turned into canyons. My mother began building walls, not of brick, but of redirections. I called Maya's preschool one afternoon to check on her progress, only for the receptionist to sound hesitant. "I'm sorry, Ms. Miller. We have Eleanor Bennett listed as the sole primary contact. She specifically requested that all communication go through her so as not to disturb your work schedule." I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot, the steering wheel cold in my hands. I felt like a ghost in my own life. I realized then that I didn't know the name of Maya's pediatrician. I didn't know if she had a best friend. I didn't know what she was afraid of at night. Whenever I pushed for details, Eleanor would sharpen her tone just enough to make me feel ungrateful. "You trust me, don't you, Sarah? I raised you after all. I'm the one here doing the day-to-day work while you're 4 hours away." It wasn't a question. It was a threat. She was weaponizing my absence, the very absence I endured to fund her life. I didn't know it yet, but the $280,000 I'd sent was only the beginning of what she intended to take from me. The turning point happened in year 5. I did something I'd never done before. I showed up without calling. I had swapped a shift with a coworker and drove straight through the night, arriving at my mother's house at 7 p.m. on a Thursday. The porch light was off. The house felt hollow. When I used my spare key and stepped inside, the only sound was the hum of a television in an empty living room. Then I heard it, the rhythmic scrape of a plastic fork against a bowl. I walked into the kitchen and felt my heart drop into my shoes. Maya sat alone at the table under a flickering fluorescent light. She was 5 years old, wearing a t-shirt 3 sizes too big, eating a bowl of instant ramen. There was no fruit, no glass of milk, no mother or grandmother beside her. "Hey, baby girl," I whispered, kneeling beside her. "Where's Grandma?" Maya didn't look surprised. She looked tired. She went to Uncle Tyler's trailer. She goes there a lot at night. I stood up and opened the pantry. My breath hitched. It was a wasteland. A half-empty box of generic cereal, 3 more packs of ramen, and a jar of peanut butter scraped so clean the sides were translucent. I checked the fridge. A gallon of milk 3 days past its expiration date and a squeeze bottle of mustard. That was it. I had wired $3,300 20 days ago. Where was the fresh produce? Where were the organic snacks I specifically requested? Where was the life I was paying for? I called my mother, my hand shaking. She picked up on the 6th ring, her voice tight and defensive. "Oh, Sarah, you're early. I just ran over to Tyler's for a second. He's having a crisis. I'm coming right back." She didn't return for 2 hours. When she finally walked through the door, her eyes were bloodshot and her purse hung open, revealing a wallet that looked suspiciously thin. "What's going on, Mom?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "Why is Maya eating noodles alone in the dark?" "Tyler had a rough night," she snapped, bypassing my question. "He lost some money. I had to calm him down. He's family, Sarah. We take care of our own." The ice water in my veins turned to fire. "I am paying for Maya's care, not Tyler's gambling debts. I'm bringing her to Roanoke. I'll switch to day shifts. We're done with this." My mother stopped mid-motion. The warm, grandmotherly mask she'd worn for 5 years didn't just slip, it shattered. She set her keys on the counter with a chilling clack. "You're going to uproot her?" she whispered, her voice like a razor. "A judge would see a mother who's been absent for 5 years, a woman who chose her career over her child's stability. I've talked to a lawyer, Sarah. You should know that." "A lawyer? For what?" "A petition for temporary guardianship," she said, her eyes narrowing. "I have the school records. I have the doctor's name on her file. I have 5 years of daily presence. You have a bank transfer. Let's see who the court thinks is the real mother." I felt the walls closing in. She hadn't just been stealing my money, she had been using my absence, the very sacrifice I made for her and Tyler's lifestyle, to build a cage for me. If I tried to take Maya now, she would claim I was kidnapping a child from the only stable home she knew. I sat on Maya's bed that night, watching her sleep. I found a drawing she'd tucked under her pillow, 2 stick figures holding hands, and underneath, in shaky first-grade letters, it said, "When can I come home?" I realized then that I couldn't just scream and pull her away. I was a nurse. I knew how to treat a critical patient. You don't rush. You assess. You plan. You act with surgical precision. My mother thought she had won. She had no idea that for the next 2 years I would keep smiling, keep wiring the money, and keep recording every single lie until I had enough to burn her house of cards to the ground. Memorial Day in our town was always Eleanor's stage. Flags lined the driveway, the smell of smoked ribs filled the air, and 20 relatives gathered in the backyard to celebrate the saint of the family. My mother moved through the crowd like a queen holding court, accepting praise for raising Maya while I was away at work. I arrived with a manila envelope tucked into my bag and a calm I hadn't felt in 7 years. I watched Tyler leaning against his $60,000 truck, sipping a beer bought with my daughter's grocery money. I watched my mother hold Maya's hand for the cameras, pretending to be the primary caregiver she never truly was. As the sun began to set, the adults gathered around the long picnic table. My mother stood up, her mason jar of sweet tea raised high. "I just want to thank everyone," she started, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Family is everything. I've given up so much to make sure this little one has a stable home." The table erupted in murmurs of, "You're a saint, Eleanor," and "Sarah is so lucky to have you." I stood up slowly. "I agree, Mom. Let's talk about exactly what you gave up." The silence that followed was suffocating. I opened the envelope. "For 7 years, I have wired $40,000 annually to this house. That's $280,000. I laid the first photo on the table, the empty, barren kitchen cabinets and the expired milk. "This is what $280,000 looks like in Maya's stomach. Ramen and mustard." Aunt Patty gasped. Uncle Ray picked up the photo, his face hardening. I laid down the second photo, Tyler's gleaming charcoal truck parked next to his newly renovated trailer. And this is where the rest of the money went. It didn't go to Maya's college fund. It went to Tyler's gambling debts and chrome rims. "Sarah, stop this," Tyler shouted, his face turning a deep, guilty crimson. "I'm not done," I said, my voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. I dropped the final document, the guardianship petition. And this is the thank you I got. My mother tried to legally steal my daughter by claiming I abandoned her, using the very work shifts I pulled to pay for her lifestyle as evidence. The backyard, once filled with laughter, felt like a courtroom. Aunt Patty turned to Eleanor, her voice a low growl. "Eleanor, is this true? Did you take that girl's money for Tyler's slots?" My mother did what she always did when the truth cornered her. She cried, "Tyler was in trouble. I'm a mother. I had to help him." "With your granddaughter's food?" Aunt Donna snapped, looking at the photo of Maya's church-donated tattered shoes. "The child is skin and bones, Eleanor." In a desperate final move, my mother reached for Maya. "Maya, tell them! Tell them Grandma takes care of you!" Maya stood between us. She looked at the woman who had hidden her from her own mother, then she looked at me. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She took 3 steps toward me and gripped my hand. "I want to go home with my mommy," she said. That was the moment the cage shattered. No lawyer, no petition, and no lie could stand against the clear voice of a child who finally felt safe. Uncle Ray stood up and took the keys to the truck from the table. "Tyler, you're done. Eleanor, I'm ashamed to call you my sister." We didn't wait for the apologies. I walked Maya into that house, packed her single suitcase of donated clothes, and left the manila envelope on the table as a tombstone for the life we left behind. As we pulled out of the driveway, Maya looked at the stick figure drawing of us holding hands, then looked at me. "Mommy, can we get milkshakes?" "Baby," I said, the lights of the highway reflecting in my eyes. "We can get whatever you want. We're going home." They say blood is thicker than water, but after everything I've been through, I've learned that boundaries are thicker than blood. It's been a year since that Memorial Day BBQ. The drive back to Roanoke that night was the longest 4 hours of my life. Maya fell asleep before we even hit the county line, her small fingers still clutching that faded drawing of the two of us. I looked at her in the rearview mirror, the rhythmic glow of the highway lights illuminating a face that finally looked peaceful. I didn't feel the exhaustion of the night shift anymore. I felt the electric clarity of a woman who had finally brought her soul back under her own roof. Our life now doesn't look like a staged postcard. It looks like reality. I'm a charge nurse now. I work day shifts, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm there to pick Maya up from Westover Hills Elementary every single day. We don't talk through a screen anymore. We talk while we're standing in our kitchen, the smell of real food, roast chicken, fresh garlic, sautéed greens, filling the air. I remember the first time I opened our refrigerator in front of her. Maya just stood there, staring at the shelves packed with milk, eggs, fresh berries, and yogurts. She didn't ask if she could have something. She just touched the cold glass of a juice bottle and whispered, "Is all of this for us, Mommy?" "Every bit of it, baby," I told her. Since that day, she's gained 7 pounds. Her skin has lost that sallow, dry tint, replaced by the rosy flush of a child who is nourished and loved. Her teacher emails me, not my mother, to tell me how Maya is thriving in the reading corner, how she's the first to help a friend who falls on the playground. As for my mother and Tyler, the consequences arrived like an incoming tide. Without the $3,300 monthly pipeline I provided, Tyler's successful life vanished. He lost the charcoal truck and the trailer within months. Aunt Patty told me he's finally in a state-mandated program, working a warehouse job and living in a modest apartment. He sent Maya a birthday card this year. There was no money inside, just his signature. I let her keep it, but I didn't let her hope for more. My mother, Eleanor, is a different woman now. The saint of the county title died that afternoon in the backyard. She lives alone, her gray roots showing, the polished veneer of her life stripped away. She writes me letters on lined notebook paper. She apologized, not perfectly, and with plenty of excuses, but she admitted she was wrong. I haven't closed the door forever, but I've put a heavy lock on it. She visits once a month, but never at her house. We meet at a public park. I sit on the bench, 12 feet away, watching her. She's allowed to be a grandmother, but she will never again be a gatekeeper. Last Saturday, Maya was standing on a step stool, helping me stir spaghetti sauce. She's very particular about the seasoning now. She looked up at me, her eyes bright and steady, and said, "Mommy, I'm glad we followed her, because now I don't have to be brave for you anymore. You're here." I realized then that I had lost $280,000, but I had gained something worth so much more. The right to be the person my daughter turns to, not the person she has to protect. My only regret is that I didn't trust my gut sooner. If you're listening to this and you feel that something isn't right, don't wait 7 years. Trust the whispers of the children. They see what we are too tired to notice. In the end, I lost a fortune, but I saved my daughter's soul. My story is a reminder that while blood connects us, only transparency and respect define a family. Never let a title, even mother, blind you to the truth of someone's actions. Protecting your children is the highest calling you will ever have. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to support our channel. What would you have done in my shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of your loved ones, and I'll see you in the next story.